Alright, Shalom. You reached the He Prayed channel. And my name is Isaac Mawath. But first and foremost, I want to say, call Halagim Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Harakakwedash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, 7:13:19, where I learned this truth from, and who rule well. Salutations to the Bakiyar, the elect, the 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. 12 tribes of Israel consist of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. 144,000 being the governing body within the 1/3. The rest of the 1/3 comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to those Israelites scattered due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So our people will come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So this is not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that die in this truth. It says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah on his return, including our King, King Mashah, who is King David. And as always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah for answering my prayers and permitting me to do such. Baba Shah Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah allow us to be an edifying lesson to at least one member of the elect. So this is going to be a quick video. Quick question I had, or a thought that came to mind, which was how much has America cost foreign nations monetarily through wars in the Middle East and Asia? Which, when I was watching the elder bishop Manat Dizak going into, I forgot the title of the video, but I know Glenn Beck was in the background. But he was going into how America is fixating to go into Venezuela, which prior to me even watching this video was all through the spirit, because I was going into a lot of Russian videos and speeches and, cabinet meetings. And it was saying how Russia is sending, supplies there. And that the main thing was that Russia was trying to for lack of better words, or the word that I want to use, which is in the back of my mind, but I can't think of it, has something to do with uphold. But I'm going to just use the word assure Venezuela's sovereignty. So in the midst of, me researching and going into things, and then the spirit leading me to the elder's video, then he said, this is Manat Zak, Didst weaken the nations. So this is the premise of this video. It says, great question, Michael or Michael, and it's one that doesn't get asked enough. Most reporting focuses on what U.S. taxpayers have spent, but the economic toll on foreign nations in the Middle East and Asia is staggering and often harder to quantify. Here's a breakdown. Direct U.S. war spending. The U.S. itself has spent 5.8 to 6.4 trillion on wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Pakistan since 2001, with the source being Al Jazeera. That figure includes military operations, reconstruction, veterans care, and interest on borrowed funds. Cost to foreign nations. While exact monetary losses for foreign nations are less precisely tracked, several categories stand out. Destroyed infrastructure and reconstruction. Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria have faced trillions in destroyed infrastructure, rebuilding roads, power grids, hospitals, and schools, as Slovakia has consumed enormous portions of their GDP. For example, Iraq's reconstruction costs after the 2003 invasion were estimated in the hundreds of billions. Lost economic output. According to the IMF, even a decade after major conflicts, per capita income in Middle Eastern and Central Asian countries remains about 10% lower than it would have been without war, which this is the IMF as a resource. So this, in the true sense of the word, Esau has decimated these foreign nations' economies, man. It says oil market shocks, conflicts repeatedly drove oil prices up or down, destabilizing economies dependent on oil exports. Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia. For instance, disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz could spike oil prices above $150 a barrel, hammering both producers and consumers. Which that's the big thing. That's one of the big things to watch for, because it's going to tie into, the final nail of this man's economy before he transitions to the digital system. It's military and security spending by allies. Nations like Pakistan and Saudi Arabia massively increased defense budgets to deal with spillover violence and instability. Pakistan alone spent tens of billions combating insurgencies linked to U.S. operations in Afghanistan. Human capital losses, millions displaced, hundreds of thousands killed, and long-term productivity losses. The Watson Institute estimates 940,000 direct deaths from U.S.-led wars, Al Jazeera, which translates into lost labor, reduced economic activity, and higher social costs. Bottom line, foreign nations have likely lost several $1 trillion collectively in destroyed infrastructure, lost GDP, disrupted trade, and increased military security costs. Unlike the U.S., which can absorb debt, many of these nations face permanent economic scars, which it says it can absorb debt, which aligns with Habakkuk, laden himself with thick clay. You go into that word clay, Vit, I believe, or abatya in the Hebrew, means heavy debt or pledges. It says, unlike the U.S., which can absorb debt, many of these nations face permanent economic scars, lower growth trajectories, reduced foreign investment, and weakened state capacity. It says U.S. wars equals $6 trillion cost to America. Foreign nations equals comparable trillions in lost GDP plus reconstruction plus oil shocks. shocks with the added burden of weakened recovery capacity. And then I asked Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground? And, which Lucifer goes as, I watched the Apostle and Rybal's video, and Lucifer goes into Venus, or the morning star, right? Which Lucifer also means light bearer, right? And right now Esau, he's the one in power, so he's the light bearer. But truly, Lucifer is who the world inwardly calls Jesus Christ, who is Yahweh Shai, because he's the true light bearer. He's the true morning star, right? But it says, how art thou cut down to the ground? Because in this sense, it's talking about Esau in America. Eventually, it's going to be destroyed. It's going to be cut down to the ground, which Didst weakened the nations, which, this line right here inspired this video, which what Elder Manatazak said, caused the spark of the inspiration, It says, America, I said, assuming Lucifer is the one who is in power, and the one in power is Esau, through America, is this part of weakening the nations? It says that's deep interpretive question. That's a deep interpretive question, Michael. But Michael means godlike, or he who is like God, or which is the name of Mayaka Allah, which is one of the archangels, is the chief war angel. It says, and it touches on how biblical prophecy gets linked to modern geopolitics. Let's break it down in an audit style overlay. Contextual context. The verse speaks of Lucifer, literally light bearer, often translated as morning star, which, goes into Venus, being cast down, associated with pride and the fall from heavenly authority, from power, right? Going into Daniel's 2nd chapter, the Most High setteth up kings and he removed the kings. It says, in its immediate context, Isaiah 14 is a taunt against the king of Babylon, symbolizing oppressive empires that exalt themselves but eventually collapse. Interpretive layers. Traditional Christian view, which, in my opinion, Christianity ain't nothing but a form of Satanism, man. It's universalism, man. It says Lucifer here is often read as a metaphor for Satan's fall, which is not talking about Satan, man. It's talking about Esau, the so-called white man, who is a child of the spiritual demon Satan. It says, though the text originally addressed Babylon's ruler, which is true. Hebrew Israelite Esau America framework. Esau is interpreted as the progenitor of Edom, later symbolically tied to Rome, and in some teachings to America as the modern imperial power, which, this is all Esau's system, is his structure. It says America, seen as the dominant global force, is equated with Esau in power. Thus, weakening the nations is read as America's military, economic, and cultural dominance that destabilizes other nations. Weaken the nation's practical overlay. If you assume Lucifer equals Esau equals America in this interpretive chain, Wars and military interventions, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, destabilization, regime change, and trillions lost in GDP and infrastructure. Economic pressure, sanctions, trade restrictions, and dollar dominance weaken nation sovereignty. Cultural influence, export export of values, media, and consumerism reshape societies, often eroding traditional structures. Political engineering, support for certain regimes or opposition movements creates instability. And this is what this damn devil does. Symbolic audit, biblical archetype, Babylon, Lucifer equals arrogant empire that rises, dominates, then falls. Modern application, America as Esau in power fits the archetype of weakening nations through war, sanctions, and cultural dominance. Outcome, just as Babylon fell, the prophecy suggests that any empire built on pride and oppression eventually collapses. It says, so yes, within the interpretive framework, Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12 can be read as describing America's role in weakening nations. It's not the only way to read the text, but it aligns with the symbolic overlay you're drawing. Lucifer as the archetype of oppressive power, Esau as the lineage of power, and America as the current manifestation. So, it's true that Isaiah 14 and 12, it does have twofold meanings, because, we know Lucifer is really Yahweh Shai, but in these times, it's Esau, but I hope at least one brother of the elect was edified, and I'm going to say Shalom.